So this is an empty map. You can see it's like basically a kitchen tile. It's 512 meters by 512 meters. I'm going to take the bump tool to start, crank it up a bit, maybe to there, and now I'll start building myself a little instant mountain. Now, so I'll just use that to kind of deform the terrain, try and make something that looks kind of organic, but you can still tell just by looking at it that it really is kind of blobby and height map looking. So that's why we added, this erosion tool. So I can take this tool and just apply it to this terrain that I made, and you'll see it. I'm just holding the trigger. It's slowly eroding it away here. You'll see it starts to cascade down the surface and make it look like a lot more, very much more organic shape very, very quickly. So that's the erosion tool. That really helps make the world look a lot more natural. And then we'll take one of the textures here. I'm going to take a savanna rock texture. And then now what I've done is I've taken a texture tool and I've applied some constraints to it so that it will only, mountain rock here, so that it will only paint on angles that are steeper than 20 degrees. What that does is it allows, see if I try and paint over here, I don't need to constrain my work. I can just make a really big giant brush and it's really easy. If I take the noise terrain tool, I can actually use this to create a huge field of very, very organic and natural terrain. So I'll just crank this up to maximum, and then boom, you can see just instantly creating a really, really noisy field of very natural terrain. Just to really get it feeling like a big natural world instead of feeling kind of like blobby fake stuff. Use this noise tool. So that's a big noisy field. Now you'll really see the strength of the texture tool though, because I'll just use those same constraints that I had, and you'll see how that combined with the noise, what it does is it creates this very, very organic feeling, eroded sort of feeling of a rocky sort of area where the steep areas of the rock are clear of dust and sand, and the sort of flatter areas is where the eroded dirt has sort of cascaded into and creates this very, very realistic feeling terrain field. But I mean, terrain is one part of our game, but what's really sets Far Cry apart is the quality and richness of the vegetation. So I'm going to take this collection system, I'm going to grab this savanna woodland. Now I'm going to put in some trees here. Now instead of placing one tree at a time and placing every bush, what we do is the same thing we do in the single player game. We're actually using sort of a procedural system where it places a large tree with the smaller sort of trees that grow in the water that gets sunk around it, or basically grows off of the droppings of the animals that eat its leaves or its fruit or whatever. So it's a procedural system based on the rules of how a savanna actually grows. So I can actually just paint in a savanna. I don't have to place all the trees manually. It would take forever to place this many trees. You'd be doing this for 3 weeks before you would ever come even remotely close to finishing a map. Just going to pop out here.
That it doesn't put it on the top of mountains? Or?
No, you can constrain it as well, but I mean, it's if I want to take something, if I painted that mountain, it's very easy for me to just unpaint it, right? I'll just do that now. Or you can constrain it as well. But we're developers, so we know how important it is for us anyways to be able to iterate quickly and change what you did, and you need to be able to see it in game. So the game is always running in the background. You just press one button, it takes about 3 or 4 seconds, and you just drop into the game, and the game is actually running in the background. It's not like a simulation of the game where you can walk around. I mean, I can all of the physics, all of the wind, all of the vegetation, everything is simulated exactly like it is in the single player game. If I want to, use my gun to shoot the branches off of the trees, they'll all break off just like they do in the regular single player game. Fire propagates just like in the single player game. Everything is exactly like you would see, except you don't take damage. You're invincible, so I can go walk in this fire and not be afraid of it. And then let's just imagine hypothetically that because I have this ability to iterate, I decide, yeah, that's pretty cool, but I don't like it. Well, because we're just using these rules here, I can just pop in here, swap out the savanna undergrass for a jungle underbrush, and then I can swap out the savanna mountain rock for a jungle mountain rock. How about that? And then I can also go back to the collection system, and I can swap out the rules for a woodland with the rules for like a dense jungle. And it just repopulates the entire map. And then you'll also hear it's changed the sound from the sort of gentle blowing breezes and sort of clicking insects of the savanna for like the cawing and monkey sounds that you would find in a tropical jungle. So now I'm walking around in a jungle with these big leafy plants that I don't see in the savanna. Again, these are all fully interactive as I move through them. So it's very, very different. Just in a few seconds, I transform it into something completely different from what it was a minute ago. There's 4 modes in multiplayer. There's deathmatch, team deathmatch, a capture the flag mode, sort of, that we call capture the diamond, where you're stealing diamonds for your warlord from the other warlord, and then a mode called uprising, which is kind of a control point based mode where one player is a VIP who's the only one on the team who can capture control points, so you need to kind of work with him and protect him to make sure that your team captures the control points, and then once you've got them all, you can try and wipe out the other team's captain, and then you'll win the round that way. So yeah, being able to place in all the tools for having gameplay is really important too. So this is like the road tool. This is what you use obviously to make roads instead of making just pure wilderness. And the road tool is cool because it dynamically sort of handles everything around it. If I want this road to be much wider, I just crank up the settings on it, boom, and it'll clear out the jungle all the way around the road. You don't need to worry about, manually clearing it. I can grab, it's a spline, right? I can just grab that point. It will remap all of the texture of the road. It'll move all the vegetation out of the way, and it will clean everything up so that it's just a really, really easy to deal with road. I don't need to worry about where I want to put it and manually dealing with anything. It's all automated and very, very easy to deal with. So now I'm going to paint in a little clearing here. Now I'll go in and I'll show you some of the objects that we have, because we have, like I said, not all of the objects from single player, but quite a lot of them. We have all of the vehicle, or almost all of the vehicle. We think we have all of the vehicles actually in 2 different flavors. So because in the multiplayer you're working for the factions, right? We've got all of them flavored as neutral. So the neutral vehicles are brown in color. So and then we have the sort of faction color-oriented vehicles. So that's like a red one, and that's a yellow one, and there's the one with the mounted M249, there's the crappy little, oops. Anyways, there's vehicles. Some of the buildings, we have, I'll take the colonial palette here. This is like all the colonial buildings we have. Let's take some random ones here. So you can build yourself a little colonial village very, very, very rapidly. Little headquarters of one of the factions there. You can control the water level as well. So like I could make a river, but instead of making a river to show you guys the water, I'll just crank up the water somewhere. Where is it? There it is. So you can see you have complete control over the water level. If you want to make rivers, you can just do it. If you want to make a map that's a swamp, you just take a jungle and you flood it so that it's just slightly taller than the plants, or slightly less deep than the plants, and you have this really swampy feeling, sort of Vietnam kind of feel to it. Also, you have control over the time of day, and it's also a server setting. So if I want to sort of recommend that the map is intended to be played at sunset, then I can set that as the time for my map, and anybody can play the map at sunset. But then the server, if he wants to, can take control over that setting and set it for whatever time of day he wants. Similarly, we have let me clear that back up to like noon. You'll see also, see how it's as we get to dawn, you'll see how hazy it is from the condensation, and then as we get into midday, it's burned off all the condensation, and the fog is really pushed back far. And then in afternoon, there's not too much, and then as we get into evening and it cools down, the haze settles back in. I'll go to noon here. And then quickly, you also have control over the weather. Again, this is a server override setting, but you can set your default. We don't have a skybox in the game with a texture. We have these procedural clouds. And as you crank up the storm factor, we get this fog, and then once you get to 100%, there's a probability it will rain. You can also hear all the trees now are blowing in the wind, and the whole physical simulation of the trees and all of the vegetation is affected by that. If I go find one of these trucks that I put in here, where'd I put them? There they are. I go find these trucks, hop in the game, with the wind blowing like that, instead of the branches just kind of dropping or going the way that they're blasted, if I blow the branches off, you'll see they blow away in the direction of the wind. So it's all the same physical simulation that you would have from single player. Boom. So there you go.